Hey there, and welcome to another Nerdy Reviews. I'm the Absolute Nerd, but you can just call me Briston. And today, we're going to be reviewing Mobile Suit Gundam Age. Now, before I start with anything here, if you're watching this on Twitch, make sure to follow me on my Twitch account here. If you're watching this on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment down below. I want to hear from you guys. Did you like this series? Did you not like the series? What about the Memory of Eden movies? Did you like them or not like them? I don't know. I want to hear from you guys. Do you think this is like a Double Zeta Gundam? Again, leave a comment down below. I want to hear from you guys. That said, let's go ahead and start off with the review here. Just like how I always like to start off things, let's just talk about real briefly about the story. And it's kind of hard to describe this series story-wise, so I'm just going to give you the most bare bones of itself here. So Gundam, Mobile Suit Gundam Age, we follow the Asuno family here through 3 different generations and their involvement in a war between the Earth and the UE, or the Unknown Enemy. That is the very base level of this series, and each story follows our 3 young men right here in different of the different generations. This is a 49 episode series that originally aired on October 9th of 2011 in Japan. And it was a series created by Level 5 after they were originally hired by Sunrise to create a Gundam game. And I believe this is the director here, Akihiro Hino, pitched a plot summary for a Gundam anime. As you can tell, the rest is history in that we get a series that's very different from most Gundam series we've seen to date in the Gundam franchise. Now, and I just want to also tell you guys this too, if some of the animation might look a little bit familiar to you too as well, and if you're not familiar with the name Level 5, you might be familiar with them if you are a gamer, particularly of like a subset of games. Level 5 is a game developing company that created games such as the Professor Layton games and the Yokai Watch games. So if you've ever played or heard of those games, you're going to be familiar with them because they're the ones that created this series. Very unique. Now, one thing I do want to talk about with Gundam Age, and this is critiquing of the series itself. Now, oftentimes, before I got into this series, I didn't watch it until I got the Blu-rays that came out a few years ago from Right Stuff. But when this series was coming out, I know this series got a lot of criticism and a lot of hate because they always akin this series to the Double Zeta Gundam. They were saying it's too childish, too kiddish, really, really bad in the story, those sort of things. So when I first time came across this series, I was very reluctant. I was very uneasy to watch it because I had already watched Double Zeta Gundam, and I'm about to watch this, and I was like, please God, no, I don't want to watch something that's absolutely awful and terrible. I'm going to tell you right now, spoilers in itself, it's not terrible, and it's not like Double Zeta Gundam. Now, I won't say completely at all. There is aspects, and I'll talk about that later too. But I would definitely say though, I can kind of understand the hate for this series, but at the same time, I just don't agree with it. But let me just dive in some basic things here I want to highlight. Starting off here was the animation of this series. The animation for Gundam Age is really, really nice. I like a lot of the soft character designs and textures in it as well. A lot of the coloring is, again, you can see it like the softer coloring on it. Lighter, it's actually lighter on the inking for the characters. So I'm like, for some odd reason, I always like harder inking, but with this animation and the character designs, it really works out very well and makes it very like light anime-ish. And it kind of fits in tone with like some of the stories it perceives in this series. Unique and wonderful in my opinion. I really like it. The music in this series is solid and great. I really love a lot of the music in this series, particularly the first opening and the end opening of Age. Probably one of the best opening and ending theme songs in the Gundam franchise. Like right up there with like Wing and Seed music. Really love it. Other than that, the inner music that's used like during dialogues, action sequences, or during story moments, great music too. Really creates a nice atmosphere and keeps you in tow with what's going on. Sorry about that. As for voice acting, though, ugh. All right, so the English dub for this series is pretty bad, pretty bad. Some of the worst I've heard in a while, and like this is one of those cases where I go like, yeah, if you want to hear bad dubbing, this is a really good example of bad dubbing. A lot of the characters just don't fit. Like a lot of the voice actors and actresses, not that they're bad or anything like that, it's just they don't fit the characters that they voice for. Particularly the younger versions of Emily and DK in Flint's storyline. I did not like their voices at all. Did not fit the characters at all. And then when you listen to them in Japanese, because when I will be reviewing later on here, The Memory of Eden, which is only in Japanese and subtitled in English, the Japanese voice actors sound and actresses sound fantastic and fit more with their characters or more in tone with their characters. I think the only character I didn't really like as much voicing in the Japanese was Flint when he's grown up as an adult and as his as an older person. So like through Asuno's arc as the father, and then as Kyo's arc as him being grandpa. I didn't like his Japanese voice actor. I love his English voice actor in as grandpa basically. The English one, he's okay as Flint. I think the Japanese one is much better, but it's okay. But honestly, a lot of the voice acting for English was I would say is miscasted. I didn't like a lot of them. Didn't fit well with these characters. Other than that, Gundam Age is a very, very unique Gundam series, and I would say that all around. The first and most noticeable unique thing about Gundam Age is that it's a story that's told in 3 different generations. So it's broken up into 3 arcs, technically, and not really too much of a spoiler. There are 4 arcs total, but we follow our first arc, which is Flint's arc. We follow a second arc, which is Asimu, his son. And then we follow Kyo in the third, not so final arc, who's the son of Asimu and grandson to Flint. I really like how they utilize this generational gap within the series and the utilization of time skips. Now, time skips is not unfamiliar with the Gundam franchise. We've seen them either between series, where they make a sequel series or a sequel movie, or like with my last review with Gundam 00, where we have like inner cuts where we would have like a nice noticeable time gap that's made reference to itself, or like between the first and 2 seasons. Unlike 00 though, Age is not season based, and a lot of the time skips are within their arc. So when one arc ends, it kind of merges off to the other. Kind of feels like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure at times for me with these time skips. They are very, very deliberate in telling you the time skips, which are really, really nice. And it gives you a nice frame of time in mind, basically. The other thing I really liked a lot about these time skips is the development of our characters. Very unique to something that we don't get to see often enough in the Gundam franchise, because a lot of times we see our characters, some of the characters we do get to grow with, but we don't get to see them develop over time or anything like that. And while the growth in times, differ, like I think with Flint being the most, not dynamic, but the most developed of the 3 characters, because we see him develop through 3 different arcs. We see Asimu develop through 2 arcs, and then we only see Kyo for his only arc, basically. But I really like how we see them in each generation and how they perceive or behave from that point. Just like how we grow up in general. We're not going to be the same people, we're not going to be the same person like 10 years ago or 20 years ago, 30, 40 or so. And I think that's really fascinating and interesting, like a character study in a sense of observing these characters and all the other characters, like the crew of the Diva and so forth. So I thought that was kind of cool. The only thing I would say that is a waste, though, and not too much of a spoilers, is that while characters transitioned over from Flint's arc to Asimu's arc, basically, characters don't really transition over to Kyo's arc. So most of the characters that we are familiar with by Flint's arc disappear within Asimu's arc. By Kyo's arc, the only really returning characters are mostly the Asimu family, like not just Asimu and Flint, but of course, like other family members like Emily or Emily, his wife, or Asimo's wife, Romery. Kind of spoilers, not really spoilers, because I mean, obviously, we kind of get these characters for the fact of the matter. That's how we have a family, right? But I mean, it's kind of a disappointment here. By the time we get to here, I wish we had more characters from Asimo's timeline really show up here. Characters like Arisa or like other helmsmen or characters within the diva itself. We don't really see that there. Not too much of a spoiler right there, but I just want to set expectations, because by the time, and that's what a lot of people tend to complain about this series, is the writing itself. Personally, I really like Flint's story, and let me put it this way too. What makes Age another unique aspect too is that each story is a different anime archetype or a different type of anime genre told. That's super really cool about Age. So Flint's story is very much like a shonen based story. It has a lot of heart. A lot of it is shonen heart, not like shonen fighting or whatnot, but a shonen heart behind that his storyline. Very familiarized. It's very energetic, and I can see where a lot of people now might not like this part of the series because it's very kid based almost. It's like in tune that kind of reminds me of like you know, of course, younger protagonists. Asimu's arc is very much like a teenager's storyline in anime. It's very melodramatic, adds a lot of flair. I would almost say it harkens back to Gundam Seed at points too, with the whole Asimu and Z-Heart, who is the antagonist of that story. And it very much reminds me of like Kira and Atherin at times. So I think that was kind of a nice little parallel and a shift in the story. When we get to Kyo's story, though, it feels more like a traditional Gundam story at points, but it's kind of an amalgamation of what we know traditionally of Gundam, of the shonen heart from Flint's story, and then the melodrama from Asimu's story, all rolled and packaged into one for Kyo. So I thought that was kind of unique. However, that's where the problems also come into play. You see, with Flint and Asimu's story, I find that the writing for their stories are very nicely written. They're packaged very well. I mean, there's some things that could be adjusted here and there, be it the characters or the events that lay out in the story itself. Most of the complaints that I've ever understood online or from people is regarding Kyo's story. And that can go from our missing characters when we transition over from Asimu's to Kyo's story. We're missing out not only on stories, but a lot of people don't like Kyo themselves. If you've watched my 00 review, you'll know that I don't like pacifistic characters, and Kyo fits within that realm too. Just not as preachy about it, but I can see why people don't like Kyo and how his inactions can get others killed or harmed or cause more issues. Even more so, and this is the bigger critical one I find, is the story itself. So when we transition over, we have another time skip, and there's less sensical about story, certain character motivations or motives, complete 180 change on characters like moralities or mentality. So it's just a little bit frustrating. I can mention character names such as Fram, Z-Heart, Ezelkant, and Flint himself. So these are just little things here, not too much of a spoiler, but just throwing it out there. Like, people who have complained in the past about like these characters now no longer make sense. They no longer represent who they were, or like, you know, the rating got really choppy and bad and clunky. I'm not going to disagree necessarily to that one there, but I feel like it's not without fault. I think even though with Kyo's arc, which is a bigger chunk of the Kyo's arc, which is the third one, and then there's a fourth and final one, I still find that overall the series is still a pretty solid series overall, and I enjoyed it a lot. But I do understand, and I get the complaints here. It's kind of funny too. I want to mention this as well. I used to hate Asimu's arc the most. I want to harken back to my Seed and Seed Destiny reviews, where I don't really like melodrama a lot. And some people go like, well, that's what the Gundam franchise is. I'm like, Not exactly. The Gundam franchise melodrama is military melodrama slash like things that are going inner character wise, what's going on throughout the war. Seed and Seed Destiny brought in what I like to call high school drama, which I don't care for at all. I never liked high school and I never cared for high school drama. That's where that kind of melodrama comes into play, and that's very much focused within Seed and Seed Destiny. That is brought back here with a Simu story and takes place in high school for all things. The problem though is that first time I had to watch it, I really didn't like it. Second time watching it now, again, this is my second time watching Age. I was excited to rewatch this series. I actually didn't find it that bad. I actually got to enjoy it a little bit more and digress a lot more. Maybe it's just a change in times. Again, just like Age itself and how the characters change throughout the ages, you know, my opinions have changed as well. Again, I've only watched this series, I feel like 4 or 5 years ago, depending on whenever this was originally released by Right Stuff. That's when I had originally watched it. I think it was like 2006 is what I think, or 2017. I can't remember. But point being though is that I didn't like him at first, and I didn't like his story overall. After a second rewatch, I actually didn't find it that bad, and I enjoyed it. The melodrama didn't grit on me as much. Other than that, even though the story can get a little bit clunky here with Kyo, I feel that the story and pacing overall for this entire series is pretty solid. From Flint's story arc to Asima's story arc, everything pretty much flowed very, very well. It gets clunky with Kyo, and I keep mentioning about Kyo because we have a steady stream of like what we are expecting from a story, building with our characters and the world around them too. By Kyo's time frame, what causes again the clunkiness is between character motives and some of the 180 flips for some of our characters, not having a real clear cut idea of where we're trying to head towards the end, right? And it kind of felt rushed at times. So it just got a little bit weird and wonky with Kyo's story. And very much so, just like some other Gundam series and movies as well, the action is what really carried Kyo's story. Other than that, that's pretty much what I had to say non-spoiler wise. So I do have a warning for you guys. I want to talk about some spoilers regarding this series here. So you might want to skip a little bit ahead to the I'm new to the Gundam franchise. Should I watch this first? So look out for that banner disappearing. But let's go ahead and begin with the spoilers here. Like I mentioned about my favorite, like of my three here, I really enjoyed Flint's story the most. And as I mentioned with the story, we do follow the three Asuno men in this series. Many like what's obviously argued is that like each story is about these characters. I argue though is that Flint is our main character throughout the entire series. I say this because even though as a father and a grandpa, basically, he is involved with these two right there, and he has influences over the both of them. But he plays very pivotal and very key to a lot of moments, and we do see him change through each arc. And I find it very fascinating and very interesting with Flint himself, like how he went from, you know, like someone who has some level of hope and wanting to protect others, and it made him a much more colder, sterner person. That made him distant from his family and created a rift with his own son. And then when we see that he comes back with Kyo and he's wanting to shape Kyo to be the defender that Asimo could not be, but at the same time he's become a little bit more lenient until we get later on in the series, which is what I was talking about, a little bit of that 180 flip. I think it's kind of funny though, because like by the end of the series, like everything was all about Flint. You know, he was everywhere and influenced so much of what's going on in the series. So I really feel that Flint was more of a main character than our other two in the series. Yes, they are overall main characters, but Flint really takes it on. I know another complaint that people had about the series is at the very end of the series, when they were complaining about like Flint wouldn't just do a 180 flip just because he saw a ghost of Urine. I can never get over her English, like how they pronounce her name in English, and I don't recall that in Japanese. They didn't really say it as much. but her name is Urine. That's Yurin, but it's pronounced urine, like your pee. It's hard. But I want to get to my point here. Some people, like a lot of people I've read about or like hear from who criticize Age, say that they didn't like how he would just flip the switch, go like from like so hell-bent on killing all vegan and stuff like that to, you know what, maybe they're not all that bad of a people or stuff like that. And here's where I argue that that makes sense. Because Flint, his initial reaction in fighting in the Federation has and always had been about protecting others. He couldn't protect his mother. He lost his mother because of the vegan attack on the colony. I forgot the name. I know it's the day Angel fell. I think that the colony was called Angel, but I think it was called something else. I could swear it was called something else. So after that, and then the attack on the newer colony that he lived in there, and him meeting Urine, really, really influenced him because the next time that he meets Urine, which was on this other colony, and then they were devising the plan to attack the asteroid that was holding a vegan stronghold. His attachment towards Urine was so much. It was like Emily was like the fall kind of character. She was almost tossable for Flint, but she had such a huge impact on him. And when Decille used her in the manner that he could not save or protect her, and then she died, he blamed himself for not being able to not only protect the people around him, but the people that he cared the most about. And as much as like some people want to argue that it's like oh, it's a bad writing, I'm like, no. Him seeing her ghost again and having that final resolve, because all these years he blamed himself for not being able to protect her. And that's why he's so stern with Asimo, trying to make him into the right soldier, to gear him in that way. And it caused Asimo to resent his father and not being able to live up to not only his father's expectations, but to surpass his own father, because he's an X-Rounder and Asimo was not. And then it goes even furthermore with Kyo too, because like he wants to protect him. And then earlier on in Kyo's arc, he gets captured and he couldn't do anything, and then he just snaps and goes like hellbent, like I'm gonna do whatever I want. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna kill every vegan. And it was just so much so like he's driven to protect the people around him that's alive, but the one that's still stuck out, and it's like, you know, it's like a tragic memory that anybody has. Like anybody who has like, you know, just a general tragic memory, it sticks with you. It forms who you are. And it's not often in our lives that we come across a tragic event, that same tragic event that forms us in the way that we are, or reminds us of things, and we get to confront that again in the same similar fashion or mode. And that's something that's unique within the Gundam series when we get those like, you know, new type moments or ghost moments, whatever you want to call it, that's not in the UC century, right? And we get this ghost moment where he talks with Urine one last time, and he's able to confront his own inner demon, his own inner issues of not being able to save someone he loved, and finally being able to let go. And in a sense, you can also look at it too, like she was a vegan herself too. So he was just coming to that terms, coming to that acceptance, coming to, hey, you know what? I'm wrong here, and I've been going about this the wrong way. And maybe it's time for me to change. And, you know, right now, at the most pinnacle moment here, this can alter everything. Maybe I should try and do something different. He's done the same thing for over what? I think he's like 50 or 60 by Kyo's arc, because he's like 10ish or 13 in this part right here. He's like in his 30s, 25 years past, and he's in his 30s. He's like 55 to 60 by Kyo's arc, if I'm remembering the timelines here. He's done the exact same thing for so long. At that point, I mean, it kind of makes sense that he stops what he's doing, stop being so vindictive, and then being told by the one person that he loves, the one person he needs to hear something from, that he hasn't heard from decades, because she's dead. to let it go. Let all the anger and hatred go. So I think, and as much as people kind of find that like, oh, it's just the writing and stuff like that, if you take all of that into context, if you take that all in together and put it within the character study of Flint himself, I think it's so poignant and so on spot that at that moment, it's reasonable within his character that he was going to change. That's my 2 cents on with Flint. And I really like that whole dynamic and change. Seeing him develop and see how he has interactions with his family line. And, you know, passing on negatively and even positively at times too, passing on some of his things. So, but that's what I saw from that aspect. Yeah. So the next person I'm going to talk about is Z-Heart. He is in Simo's arc, obviously, main portion, and then of course in Kyo's arc as well. Z-Heart's like a mixed bag for me. He's like a pseudo Char, and then like throughout this arc right here, he's like trying to he's like learning to become human in a sense, and then he's not, and there's the conflict between him and Asimu and stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of really nice. Reminds me a lot between Kira and Atherin. And that was all fine and dandy, right? Once we got to Kyo's arc, though, that's where we get a lot of problems, a lot of issues with him. He becomes a very contradictory character, even learning about Izokant's real motives about Project Eden. And he kind of like does a weird like 180 and goes like super like hellbent into completing this thing here, even sacking people like Fram. And I thought it was also sad for Fram's character too, because she's the kind of character that like she's like, oh, I don't know why my brother sacrificed his life for you. And the way I saw is like he sacrificed his life for Z-Heart at the end of the second of Asimu's storyline, because he was a man that was going to be hellbent on completing the intention, the goal, the vegan mission, right? And even though it's kind of weird, because like she's another character that turns 180. She goes like from like, I'm gonna kill him if he's like an extremist or some jazz like that, and then she all of a sudden becomes like super enamored with him and super longing to be with Z-Heart and wanting to do every single thing that, you know, when he asks her to sack her life, she does it. Even though, and it's kind of funny though, the series does this really mean thing to her, where it's like I view you, like Z-Heart's like, I view you as a very valuable subordinate. And she like, after she leaves the room, she's like, oh my god, he only like I like, she wants to say I love him, but he only views me as a subordinate, and that's the best I'll ever get, and I'll move on with that. And I'm like, really? But it's kind of weird because like we get the whole idea, like the emotionalism between the Vegan and how they're kind of like Vulcans from Star Trek almost, where they disassociate themselves from emotion and void themselves of emotion, but yet they can't help but be emotional themselves at times too. So there's a lot of weird writings here and contradictories amongst the characters, and then regarding Vegan emotions and stuff like that. But I felt it was a shame with Z-Heart and how he was like so much that he wants to do this, finding out the real motives, and then he still goes along with it. I'll talk about this later on too, but when we get to Memory of Eden, I really like how they retell and re-explain that and make more sense out of it. Now, other than that, I just think it was just a shame Z-Heart was a wannabe Char in a sense, and they did a really poor job of portraying him in the third and final arc for Kyo. Speaking of Kyo too, when I first watched this, he was very, very aggravating for me. Now, not so much as aggravating. I think what's just aggravating about him is that his fighting style is very pacifistic. He's trying not to kill people and stuff like that. Yet when it comes to other people dying, he doesn't really do anything about it. The scene, like the biggest offender too, was Gerard Spurgard. And if I'm saying her name correctly here, it's kind of hard to say it. And he has the power to end the fight and kill her, and he could not. And it's up to Flint to land a killing shot on her, and yet she is killing and going crazy with everybody. It's just frustrating with the characters that have all this power and then whine about not wanting to kill and stuff like that. I get it. It's the whole, with great power comes with great responsibility, but at the same time too, if you are trying to fight for pacifism and not wanting people to get killed, yet not willing to do anything to protect the others that you are saying that should not be killing too, and they get killed, well, then are you a hypocrite yourself? You know, like, you are letting people die instead of protecting people. And instead of protecting people that you should be protecting, you're protecting the people that are the attackers, the killers. It's a backwards thinking, in my opinion, here. And I'm like, well, if you're going to protect them, you need to protect the people you're trying to protect too. Okay? This whole I don't want people to die thing makes sense. Look, I'm a pacifist myself too, but the ideology to get behind that mentality is really, really stupid. I want to protect my attackers, but I'm not going to save the people who I'm trying to protect. That's very frustrating. I can get behind a lot of people when they get frustrated with Kyo about that, and I'm right there with you too. The only thing that I don't get as frustrated with Kyo is that he's not super preachy about it, and he tries to save the people, not by a whole lot, but he tries, so I'm going to give him that. It's not like he's really in a peacecraft and preaches and prances about with pacifism while doing absolutely nothing to protect the people or anything like that. Though Relena does try to utilize her political power to shift the tides of power and gear more people towards pacifism. So that's something on her end. Or maybe I can go back to Saji from Gundam 00, and where he's not trying to blame others or blame anybody else for the misgivings of what happened. So I mean, there's different aspects. He's another one of those pacifistic characters in the Gundam franchise that just grits on my nerves. I'm glad that other people see that too, but he's not as terrible as other people portray him to be, though. That's my thoughts on that. That's all I really want to say regarding Gundam 00 itself, but I do have suits I want to talk about, or my favorite suits of the series. So if you're not familiar with this segment here, with every single Gundam series that's introduced into the Gundam franchise, the series introduces a whole new slew of suits, be it new suits, new designs or redesigns, battleships, those sort of things. Gundam H is no different from this. In fact, they introduced a whole new slew of suits. Some of them are very reminiscing to the like Universal Century suits and all that. However, there's a neat little twist, and that's actually the enemy suits. So I love a lot of the designs for these suits here. I have a couple of honorable mentions, but I'm going to tell you this right now. I am in absolute love and enamorment with the Yui or Vegan suits. Absolutely love them. I love from the designs to the weapons to the sound effects that they make with their eyes. I love my Zaku like mono eye sound, but the sound that they make when their eyes are like turned on or whatnot is super cool. I really love a lot of the vegan suits. But before I gush about them, let me just go ahead and bring about some honorable mentions. First honorable mention is the Clanch suits. I have the Clanch custom up here. It's not that it's a bad like. I don't know, something about the design about it. It's so like weird, blocky and cool. Not like a true GM base, but it has that screen face that it's not like it's smooth but blocky, right? And of course, I cannot not talk about suits that transform, because I love my transforming mobile suits. So I love that it's a transformable type. It's pretty cool. It's very reminiscent of the Age 2 and how it utilizes the weapon on the face level when it transforms. But other than that, this is an honorable mention. It's not one of my favorites. Same thing with the Adele. The Adeles, which are very similar to the Clanch type, I just like its simplistic form. It's got, again, a lot of these blocky textures and blocky details. The face is really cool. It's got this like really nice like face helmet guard. Reminds me of like Halo ODST. kind of suits or like the helmets. I like that a lot. It's really cool looking. For some odd reason, again, it's not like a GM. It has a personality behind that face, like on the face itself. I really like it a lot. The last but not least is the Genoase. I picked the Genoase 2 in particular because I like the later versions of the suit, but even the first form of the suit, I don't really mind it at all. The Genoase is a really cool looking base level, like GM inspired suit. Super basic, super like detailed in itself too. Again, with the helmet, it's got a lot of detail behind it, a lot of characteristic to it. I like it a lot. But these are just honorable mention suits for me. I really do like them a lot. But if we're going to talk about suits I love or my favorite from this series, let's start off with the Gundams, because actually the Gundams are some of my favorites too. I really like the Age 1 normal type. Such a basic design, reminiscing of the original Gundam, but I just really love its base level design. It does get some of the other upgradable parts, but I don't care about them as much. I really just love the base level of the suit itself. Other than that, the Age FX. This is actually Age 3, but they just upgraded that this is the final form of the Age 3. It's a really cool suit. Unfortunately, it's used by Kyo, of all people, so it's a very pacifistic suit. Very, very pacifistic. It's a shame, is what I have to say, because it utilizes a lot of I think they call it the bits, but I like to call them funnels. What do they call it? It is funnels, sea funnels. There we go. He utilizes the funnels to disable a lot of the Vegan suits. He seldomly uses his blaster, often using like the beam sabers that are in the hilts or the arm braces, which are really, really cool. I love the overall design and utilization of this suit. It's just a shame that we don't get to see really, really powerhouse. One thing I wanted to talk about before I jump into my favorite suits too, is something that's very unique to this series. Let me see if I can find Age 2 normal. Here we go. And Age 3. The fun things about these suits here is that it pays a lot of homage to the first 3 Gundam series of the Universal Century. By this, I mean, if you look at it with the 3 ages, with the 3 generation types, right? We see that with Flint's age, we have the original Gundam, right? Very base level. The only thing that's going to be different between the original Gundam and Age 1 is that there's no core fighter, right? But they utilize some other things, some gimmicky things, that's what I like to put it, right? Instead of the G armor, we get the Age system, so it switches out armaments and stuff like that. So it's very much like that. When we come to Age 2, though, it's very much with Asimu's story, and because he is a teenager himself too, it's very similar to, like, not similar, but akin to like Camille's story almost, or Camille's suit at least. Just like in Zeta Gundam, we are introduced to transformable mobile suits, and that's what we get here. The main Gundam is transformable into a fighter type. It's really cool how we kind of got those, like, little bit of those parallels going. The last parallel I want to show you guys is the Age 3. This one's kind of big and obvious too, but it's very reminiscent of the Double Zeta Gundam, and it kind of goes alongside with Kyo's story, him being young again too, and another kid, but it looks very similar to the Zeta Gundam from the I think it was the Sigmaxis rifle, which is a not buster level, but like a hypermega particle cannon from the rifle itself. The beam sabers are huge and ginormous. You got these wing binders right here that are very similar to the ZZ Gundam. Let me try and see if I can pull up Z. As you can see right here, similar features in the color aspects. We got that blue body with the inner reddings, the feet. Again, similar aspects to the original Gundam. So with the Age 2 and Zeta Gundam, while the colors are not exactly the same, because again, this is the Age system, so it's going to look like the original Age, but the transformables is still there. Not the same looking of the transformations, mind you, but transformable nonetheless. Lastly is the Age 3. And Age 3, as you can see what I'm talking about, like very similar with features of the ZZ Gundam. The other thing about the Age 3, in particular, not from the Age FX, but Age 3, it utilizes a core fighter system. Very similar to the ZZ Gundam, where it has different core fighter modes. We also have a core fighter basis system for the Age 3. So as you can see right there, like that, G Fortress, and then we got the top and bottom. So again, the suit designs for the Age Gundam in particular, it pays a lot more homage and respect. I'm not gonna say outright copy because it's not like, you know, say a Zaku Warrior or Goofik Knight or a Dom from Sea Destiny. Not an outright rip and just playing around with it. No, it's a brand new design Gundam, but having similar aspects or homages towards the original suit itself. So I just wanted to point that out there for you guys. Other than that, I want to talk about my favorite suits, right? So what I have here is I destroyed it again, and I apologize, and that's okay. But I really am enamored with a lot of these vegan mobile suits. Vegan suits are so cool looking. I love the design. Now, most of the designs of the vegan suits go mix between looking very dragon-esque and insect-like, and they kind of fuse them together to make these very unique mobile suits. We're gonna start off low, and we're gonna go off to my favorite. So it's kind of funny because we're starting off high. The Warza R, which is Z-Heart's suit, is very reminiscing. These are ground types though, but very reminiscing of the Zagox. Because when we see these suits, not only they're in the desert, but we also see them in this jungle-like area, and the fighting was kind of similar to the attack on Jaburo in the original Gundam. But I love this suit for its mobility and utilization. And it's kind of hokey like this too, but it goes through the ground and it's really, really fast. It's kind of cool. Like a Tremor Gundam. My next favorite one here is the Zetas R. This is another one of Z-Heart's suits. One of his earlier ones. Decil also uses this one, but it's just called the Zetas. I just like the Zetas R because I like the little red accent, like not accents, but a little red more emotions right there. Of course, this is one of my favorite suits because it transforms. It's a very simplistic transformation, but I really love the design. I can't get over like these weird, like they're pointy yet like smooth, and they're jagged yet they're like rounded. Very, again, dragon-esque looking, but also insect-like at the same time too. It's combining two things I like. I can't pronounce its name. I didn't even know its name because they don't really say it in the series. They said it maybe like once or twice, and it's passable. As a Giraga, really cool looking suit. It gets equipped with the X transmitters later on, so that way you, Z-Heart can use these bits. It does not transform, but it has this weird little tail thing. It's very humanoid-esque looking. Reminds me of a Xenomorph from the Alien franchise too at points. Very cool looking to itself. The next one here is the Fonfarcia. Now there's the Farcia, which is, it's basically a similar design, but the Fonfarcia, I really like this one because it has the bits with the little flower baton it has. And it's cool because the baton acts as like a, it has like a beam ribbon attack that it uses, and the funnel or the bit pieces can actually gather around and looks like a little bouquet and fire a mega cannon almost from there. I really love a lot of its effeminate features. Again, we don't get a whole lot of effeminate looking suits, but it's very effeminate looking, and just this like this hood, this petal-esque hood over her shoulders around the head basically. And we got the normalized vegan face for a lot of the suits. Love it. It's super like very cutesy but very formidable suit. I really, really like it. Also, if you haven't noticed as well, it's got a gem on the chest. What's up with me liking gems on the chests of suits? Oh wait, that's like a lot of the vegan suits too. It's not really gem, but like that kind of like gemish looking. My next one, this one's really, really high up there. I really like the Zadra. I'm kind of sad that this one doesn't get utilized as much, but it's a really cool suit. It has this really neat looking, is it the sword right here? Yeah, like the sword itself was kind of cool. I think it was actually on the previous suit, the Ghidra, where it has a spear and it can shoot from the spear and then separate and use it as an attack. I think it's so cool, but I love the overall design. Again, goes right back to that insect dragon looking suit. My next favorite one, these are all my favorites, by the way. I'm like, if I could find models of these suits, I would totally grab them. Now, these suits coming up, I found models for them. They're kind of pricey. I would like to get them, though. I like the Gundam Legolas. It like, a lot of people go like, oh man, it's just a rip of the original Gundam and something. Like, yeah, it is. But you know what? It's the original Gundam looking like a vegan suit. It's got a lot of, like, okay, humanoid Gundam look. Throw in with the vegan design and textures to give it this insecty, dragon-like look. And it is a formidable suit. I love, like, a lot of its armaments and weapons. The bits that come out from that shield is kind of terrifying because it's not like your traditional funnel of bits where it's a mechanized piece that moves around by mind control. No, these are energy particles that are controlled by your mind. I think that's far more scary and more dangerous than funnels and bits, because those funnels and bits can be destroyed, but those energy particles can be constantly generated until you run out of energy. Super crazy cool, super formidable, kind of scary too. But I love the overall design of this suit too. Also, the fun fact about it too is that the eyes, it has the vegan eyes where it's like this weird like little VW kind of thing, but it can open up and have the Gundam eyes itself too. So I'm like, the best of both worlds. Best of both worlds. The highest technology vegan technology can offer alongside with the age system. Come on. It's a shame that this suit got really, really wrecked by between Zihard and Simu's fight. By the way, that's a very disappointing fight. Oh, I forgot to tell you. So these next three suits are my absolute favorite. These are the suits I'm so enamored with in this series. I love it. And they all are very similar, and you're going to see what I'm talking about. And you can already see first here with the Bakdo. The Bakdo, it looks kind of hokey here. It looks cooler in motion and in action in the series. Again, right with that dragon look. Insect inspiration design-esque. It transforms into a dragon. How cool is that? I love it. Oh my god. Its dragon form's actually cooler than this picture here. I wish I could find a better looking picture, but it's got like these weird like facial features, like almost like a, not like kind of like a mole, but like a beard. And it has like the ears, like you can kind of see it, not by a whole lot. It's hard to see in this picture, but such a cool looking suit. I really, really love it. The next one that takes over from this one here, because, well, this one can transform and it's like, it's not as great looking. This one just takes it all in. The Danazine. It's funny, I call it by these names, but we don't actually know the names of these suits at all. We don't hear them really called out in the series. We just know them. It's a vegan mobile suit. It's a UE mobile suit. But that's about it. I love this design. This one is it's really hokey because it doesn't really transform exactly. It kind of transforms, but when it's not in flight mode, it looks like this, like a dragon. So cool. It's dragon, but jagged looking, and it's got like a lot of these insect-like features. It's little beam saber. Can I show the beam saber? It doesn't have it. Beam saber comes out from here. It's like, it's kind of funny when it slashes it and cuts down mobile suits or the Genoases and stuff like that. I just love it. Also, it's really hokey where it has a beam particle cannon right here in its junk area. So when it flies, it fires it from that spot. Or when it stands, it's like, and fires. I thought that's just so cheesy and funny, but I really love it. This whole design's so cool. But my number one favorite Gundam or suit from Gundam Age is the one, the only, the first suit you ever see in this entire series, and I never heard of its name before. Gefran. I really, really, really love the Gefran. Not so much for its humanoid form, but for the dragon form. This one is so cool. It's so many. Let me put it in the purple because I like it, like the purple colors, and in the dragon form, it's just so menacing and cool looking when you're first introduced to them, and it's like it's so alien, so different, and the way it attacks. Now, like with the Vegan suits, a lot of them have the like a beam spray in their hands, like a Gatling gun almost, and it can also turn into a beam saber. I thought that's cool. I don't care too much for having 6 fingers or whatnot, but I just like that. It's like it's super like versatile. Its tail can be used as a cannon or a beam cannon. It's transformed. It transforms. That's another cool thing too. I wish I could show this, but when it flies, it kind of has like this hovering effect, like this hovering hue effect. The purple ones have these like really nice purple ones that go with it. So like the first episode, they look really cool flying. We do get some barrel rolls from these guys too. So when they do like a barrel roll, it's really cool. Look, I just can't stop saying it's cool, but I really love the Gefran. Haters gonna hate, and they might not like a lot of the designs because it's so alien different. I think this is so welcoming, so warm to the Gundam franchise. I really love it. And it's not these hokey, stupid looking weird things. It actually looks legit cool. Love it. But that's what I gotta say about my favorite suits of the Gundam Age series. But let me just get back to grounding ourselves just a little bit here. So let me just go ahead and notify our viewers who don't wanting spoilers at all. All right, folks, I hope you guys all came back here. So no more spoilers here. Done with all of that. But jump into my next segment here. And that is, of course, I'm new to the Gundam franchise. Should I start off with Gundam Age first? This one is a little bit of a hard one here too, because it's a little bit contradictory with certain aspects of Gundam itself. And I'll give you my explanation here. My answer is yes, you can start off with Gundam Age. I think it's a fine series to start off with. Reason I say this is that it's entry level. It's self-contained story. You don't need to be worried about sequels or anything like that. You can just jump into there and just enjoy the series as it is. It does have elements of the Gundam franchise, or core elements of the Gundam franchise, that are throughout the entire series. My only issue, though, is that the precedents or expectations that it sets for a Gundam series going forward, because this is a very different story where it takes place in 3 different generations, it's not the same like any other Gundam series. So that's where I get a little bit iffy about that one. It might not set the right expectations, but it's still an overall good series that maintains 2 of the 3 things I'm more concerned about when I want to introduce someone who's new to the Gundam franchise. To me, I think that definitely gets a pass, and Age is easily an easy jump into Gundam series. That being said, as for an overall, while it is not by far the best and well-received Gundam series in the entire Gundam franchise, Age has a lot of heart and a lot of fun with the franchise itself. Spanning over 3 different generations in this respective arcs that give a whole lot of variety of different anime themes and undertones, while still paying respect and honoring the core elements of the Gundam franchise. Now, there are some missteps in the third to final arc, and you could say the final arc itself too, but this doesn't destroy the overall story of the series, alongside with the action that keeps you entertained throughout. Again, I say this, haters are gonna hate, but Gundam Age is a timeless good fun and a great entry point for the Gundam franchise, in my opinion. That said, Mobile Suit Gundam Age gets a timeless 4 out of 5. But wait, folks, don't leave just yet. There's more. Because not only am I going to cover Age, but I'm also going to cover, oopsies, the Memory of Eden story or movie. So I'm just going to quickly glance over the story here because it's something we kind of talked about a little bit too. But Mobile Suit Gundam Age Memory of Eden is well, let's just start off with the story, right? So basically, this story takes place of the second generation, or covering Asimu's story arc. We follow Asimu, Zeheart, and Romary as their friendship builds and then becomes conflicted when the war between the Vegan and Earth come into play. This is a two-part, 1 hour and 18-minute compilation movie set that was made a year after the completion of Gundam Age. Now, notice that I say it's an hour and 18 minutes. This is one of the most shortest, if not shortest one, for compilation movies in the Gundam franchise. Most of them clock around about 2 hours. Some of them come in at an hour and 30 minutes, but this is coming in at an hour and 18 minutes each. 2 episodes, or 2 movies. Now, like most compilation movies, they cut out the episode, or so, just like most compilation movies, they cut out a lot of things, such as like a lot of episodes, either reduce or wholesale cut them, alongside with a lot of characters or character development too. The movies are mostly focused only on and solely on Asimu and Zeheart, with Romary being a support character in here. Now, this is where I'm going to say, like, there's a lot of things I want to save again for the, what's the Gundam difference between Memory of Eden and Age itself. But those are some pretty most common compilation things that we're aware about. However, I'm going to share with you guys some newer things here, and I'm not going to do like a side-by-side comparison. But what I want to tell you is this. So, like I mentioned before, the compilation movies focus more on these 2 characters. A little bit more so with this. Like the first movie follows with Asimu more, and they still build off on these 2, but it follows Asimu more, and then the second movie follows more of Zeheart. This is where I'm going to say this is a very interesting set of compilation movies, because I'm actually very impressed with these movies. The first one, I can't even honestly want to call it a compilation movie. The first movie is almost like 80% new footage and 20% footage from the series. You heard that right. 80% new footage. In fact, much of the first movie of Memory of Eden is a retelling of the events that took place, or at least the first part of the second generation, or Asimu's story. A lot of it is retold, redone, newer dialogue, a lot of newer scenes to really emphasize and build up the friendship between Asimu, Zeheart, and Romary. So a lot of it is just brand new. And in fact, surprisingly enough, in an hour and 18 minutes, the movie does a fantastic job, and it does a much more well-paced, well-done manner of telling a much more concise story, and actually the buildup of their friendship than the series ever did. The series, again, does deal with a lot of other characters, a lot of little subplots, and a lot of things that happen here and there that does really interject and interrupt a lot of the friendship building between these 2. But the movie takes a lot of that out. Like, for example, we do see Flint, but he's only like a couple of scenes. We see some other characters, but not really the focus. Everything has been cut and like reduced the fat to a fine point where all that's left is the meat. That's between our 2 characters and Romary being the third. It's actually fantastic. It was such a surprise of the first movie. I was just surprised. It's not in a way that any compilation movie has ever been, where, you know, most compilation movies, they cut the scenes and it feels very hacky slashy, choppy, very, very jagged and clunky. This movie was very smooth. It was as if I was watching an anime movie, and it just happened to have Gundams and mobile suits in it. The development between the characters were so smooth, and I'm like, it was a shame to me, and it made me think back to like Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam New Translation, where if we really want to retell a story, this is what I expect. This sets a fantastic expectation of what you want to do when you want to retell a story. Not just hack and slash and take segments from the series, but retool the series in a way to reformulate and create a brand new story. Memory of Eden's first movie does exactly that. And I would almost say it's almost perfect. It outshines a lot of other compilation movies, like wholeheartedly. It almost beats out the original Gundam, like the original Gundam trilogy in my mind. One thing that does set it apart, though, is towards the last 20 minutes of the movie, it becomes more closer to, like, you know, the compilation stuff that we see, taking a lot of bits and pieces from Simu's arc here from the series, and not so much as newer footage or anything like that. Just more or less honed down to the more important fights and more poignant towards their friendship and all that jazz. So that was pretty much it. But the first movie was an absolute surprise to me. So, as much praise as I give to the first movie, the second movie is where we kind of go downhill from here. It really much more resembles closer to an actual compilation movie of previous Gundam movies to begin with. So much of it, like how the first movie was 80% new footage, 20% is stock footage footage from the TV series. The second movie is now 80% footage from the TV series and 20% new footage. The newer footage, though, does add quite a bit and gives a lot more explanation behind Zehart's character and a little bit more explanation of why and what he's doing from the third and fourth arc. You see, because as I mentioned earlier on, most of the complaints about the series is mostly around about with Zehart's character by third and fourth arc, and how it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So in the movie here, it gives a lot more scenes where it's depicting a lot of his inner turmoil, his mentality state, and even seeing the dead too, and how it impacts Zehart's decisions, alongside with him still wanting to do what Ezelkant's true motives are for Project Eden. Although it still seems a little bit backwards of a character, at least it has a little bit more of an explanation, and it has a little bit more heart to it. It's not a fully developed explanation, I still feel, but you know what? It was much better than Zehart's just, okay, that's your motive? All right, let me go ahead and do that, like he did in the series. Here, there's more inner turmoil and more conflict within himself to accept Ezelkant's true motives for Project Eden. So that's what I want to say real fast about the movies itself. I do have some spoiler portions here. Not that much, though, but might want to skip ahead to the if I recommend this movie or not for new viewer. All right, so for spoilers for Memory of Eden here, I like how they like. So I want to dive a little bit more into Zehart's explanation or reasoning behind going along with Ezelkant's true motives. He knows that Ezelkant's true motives is not pure, not good enough, and it's a distaste towards the theme of memory in these movies. And the way that he tries to justify is basically like, those that have already died, I don't want their deaths to be in vain. And we've all been fighting for this for so long, I'm still gonna fight for this. If not for Ezelkant's true motives, I'm gonna fight for our original. It's basically fighting for our original goal, which is to come back to Earth and make it our home again. That's basically it. Whereas Ezelkant's motives was basically, oh, I'm just trying to handpick the most superior X-rounders, basically, and then make them the survivors, and everyone else can just go off and die, quite literally. So that's pretty much it with his reasoning. I like, though, that they give a lot more explanation and a little more dive into his inner turmoil, where he's conflicted because of the people who have died, and they're looking down at him and upset with him being flippy floppy, like not adhering to the true to the goals of what the Vegan mission is. And then when realizing what Ezelkant's is, hearing back from the dead, it's kind of like this nice like little thing, but with his inner turmoil and rationalizing his actions. One other thing I really did like too, there was an alternative scene with him and Fram. So there was an alternative scene where he tells her about how he feels about her, and it's not really truly feels about her, but like how he views her. And it's much better. It's a much better and respectful scene than it was in the series, where the series he tells her like, "I value you as a subordinate." Whereas in this one here, he tells her like how he values her and doesn't quite tell what he wants to tell, but you can get the idea. And that gives Fram so much more emphasis into her character. Like, it's not so much her like blindly following him anymore. It's like, I know he loves me, but he can't say that. And he's trying to be strong. And this is the idea. This is the kind of man that I wanted to follow, that my brother sacrificed his life for. You know, like that felt more in tune with Fram from the beginning of the third arc when she was introduced, versus like how she was in the series, where he tells me I'm his subordinate. This is the best I'll get. I guess I also go kill myself. That's not the case here for Fram. And they also give an additional scene for her too, which I felt was touching and sad. They still kept Fram's death the same way. One major difference though is that when they had that kind of like ghost new type-esque interaction, Fram and Zeehart share a passionate kiss. So I thought that was like very, very touching, because we didn't get that in the series. We know that Fram loves him, but we didn't really know how Zeehart truly felt. Kind of got an idea, but it was very, very hard to tell. And we get that more so in the movies. And I feel like it's more of a character completion for Fram and also for Zeehart. So I really like that little additional thing there, and the little before additional scene, that an alternative take to how Zeehart had his final conversation with Fram. So liked a lot of that put in together there. Last thing too was the fight between Asimu and Zeehart, the final fight. A lot of it. So the series was a huge letdown. The fight ended off so quickly, so fast, despite that Zeehart had the most highest tech Gundam besides Gundam FX, right? And he's fighting against Asimu in a outdated, outclassed Darkhound Gundam, or Age 2 Darkhound Gundam. He was thrashed because he was just all conflicted and all that stuff. Here, Zeehart is still conflicted, but he's more resolved in his manner. He's more resolved to complete the mission and get Vegan onto Earth. And Asimu is just more determined to stop, Zeehart. The fight in this scene is probably one of the most savage and brutal fights. Albeit it's about 2 to 3, maybe 4 minutes long, right? But it's absolutely brutal. Absolutely savage. It is just one of the most enjoyable fights and so redemptive from the series. It's like one of my top tier fights I enjoyed watching. We really see the utilization of the Gundam Legolas versus Darkhound, the absolute desperate struggle Asimu's trying to go against Zeehart, and just the fighting was just intense. It does still end off in a similar way. Yes, Zeehart still dies, but we also get an additional scene where Zeehart has one more heart-to-heart conversation with Asimu. And I felt like this conversation was the most poignant, because we did get something similar to it, but it wasn't that strong, that huge of an emphasis. But this newer scene, this retelling of that particular part, really hits home and then really concludes perfectly right there. I know some people might not be happy with the ending, because like, oh, when Zeehart dies, we ended off right there. But the whole movie, these two movies were about like this not Top Gun-esque friendship, but this friendship between the two, this Point Break kind of a situation. And they have one more heart-to-heart conversation, and Zeehart, in his heart, knew he did everything wrong. And his only regret was that he did not hold on to the memories of being human and cherishing the memories that he had with Asimu and Romary, that he couldn't stop what they were already set forth as the Vegan mission, you know, like, and try to change things or turn things around. And if anything else, he went out in a loving and caring way from his friend, and knowing that no matter what, even after all the things that had transpired between the two of them, Asimu still had that love and tender care for him as a friend. And that allowed him to go a little bit more peacefully. Like, you know what? I gave it my all. I did my best. even though it's Simu who, bested me, like, should have done better, but you know what? This, like, the fight itself is gonna die with me. And I think it's like he just took all the responsibility that Ezelcan just dropped onto him, and then all the aspirations and all the dead who fought up to this point, all that went with him. And he went out with that love of a friend, and it just hits on all those pinnacles, on those, like, really finer points. I think it was really, really touching and a really nice piece to add to finish it off. And the movie does end not abruptly. I think it ends right there because you know what? The second movie was Zehart's story. And with his death, it's very much so like any movie that has your main character dying in it. It should be stopping right there because that's it. One last thing I really do like is that we do get an epilogue, but I think this epilogue is more of a companion piece towards the series overall. We see the tombstones of Dean and Lou, who were the kids and teenager that Kyo meets in the third when he goes to Mars, basically, or the I forgot the vegan planet thing was called. So we got that there. It doesn't make sense because they were completely cut. Most of Kyo's stuff, everything about Kyo and whatnot was cut out. So it doesn't make sense that those the tombstone for them was there. But we also have a tombstone for Zeehart and Fram. My only issue, okay, hear me out. My only issue with that was that how does anyone know that Zeehart and Fram had some level or a desirable relationship with each other? That was the only thing that was never explained. Other than that, I felt that was a very nice and beautiful little epilogue kind of end. Yes, they say like, oh, the Vegans and the Earth signed a treaty together and they won't fight anymore. But I think it was a nice thing to see those tombstones right there. I say it's a complimentary to the series because when Zeehart dies, screw him, he's gone, basically, right? When Dean and Lou died, we know that Dean was trying to take Lou's ashes with him to Earth and all that stuff like that. So it was nice to finally see, like, if you can add that epilogue to the end of Age, we got a little bit of a happier ending, even though they are dead, but a little bit of a happier ending and a more of a resolve for Dean and Lou finally going on to Earth. Same thing for Zeehart and Fram. So I thought that was a really nice little thing to add on towards Age's ending. Again, more of a side thing and a complimentary thing to go along with Age's overall ending. That said, I do want to talk really briefly, super briefly, about the suits of this movie. Now, if you're not familiar with my thing, and I already did it earlier, but there's newer suits that get introduced, new suits, designs, redesigns with movies and series. Memory of Eden is a little bit different here because it's just a compilation. However, what makes this compilation different than anything else is that they added in a couple of things that weren't in the series itself, particularly one set of a Gundam, and then a different recoloring. So, first and foremost, I want to talk about is the Age 1 Sordia. Apparently, this is a suit that was only in a game specific, and then when they were making this movie, they included this suit. Now, what you can't see on this suit, though, was really cool, is the sword and shield. Its appearance is really cool because when it appears, Asimu throws down the shield to land into the ground to protect Romary from getting attacked by a Bakto, I think that's what it was, or was it a Gefran? I can't remember. One of those two suits. And then he comes in with his sword and just absolutely slices and dices things. It was a very cool scene, but the suit overall has that like knight look. It looks like a knight. It has this sword and shield look. It's really cool. It's something I would actually want to get a model of. It's a shame that we don't have a better picture of it. I don't have anything. Maybe in the future I'll get some screenshots, but I really like that. The other one, and something I already talked about in the series, but it was a little bit different, is the Gundam Legolas. We get its recoloring. This is not a good version because this is just something, repainted over from this picture right here, but it's in Zeehart's colors. It's actually a little bit more of a deeper red, if I remember correctly, but the Gundam Legolas is more or less painted in Zeehart's colors, and we get to see it in its full ferocity, especially during the fight with the Simu. We get to see this thing go balls to the walls all out, and that's something we did not really get to see in the series. We got to see it in like a few fights, but this one, if not for just a few fights here and there in the series, the fight between him and Asimu was super redemptive. And I mean, it just really stood out about how awesome this suit really was. So that's all I gotta say regarding the suit overall here. So let me just go ahead and remove that spoiler banner here, and we can just move along. So hope you folks come back here from the spoiler section and stop by here. We're almost done, so I appreciate you guys sticking around. But let's go ahead and continue with our next little segment here. I'm new to the Gundam franchise. Should I watch this movie first, or compilation movies first? This one's a little bit harder, but I'm probably gonna say no. Do not start with Memory Eden as your first Gundam movie or foray into the Gundam franchise. For this, I say is this. It basically the second arc, although it is a retelling of the second arc or the second generation, it's a lot more finer told. It cuts out a lot of other things that I find is a lot more enjoyable, or what made Age really, really enjoyable. Additionally, a lot of it might not make sense. I'm seeing this again because I had watched the series and then I watched the movies right after. If you had just watched the movies themselves, it might not make a lot of sense about what's going on event-wise, because it's so heavily focused on the character building for these two that it really neglects everything else around the world. This is almost reminiscing to the Gundam Seed Special Edition movies. The only major difference, this is far, far superior than those three movies could ever be. But other than that, it is not an easy get into. Again, this is the second arc or second generation. It doesn't really hold up a lot of the core themes of the Gundam franchise. In fact, it instills its own themes and coverings, like talking about memories, the importance of that, what it is to be human, those sort of things. The third and final one here is that it does not set good expectations for other Gundam series or Gundam movies if you're trying to get into that. Like compilation movies, it sets a bad expectation for that because most compilation movies are cobbled up messes at times. Sometimes they really work out. This is a really good example that works out, but not good for the other ones. And for series-wise, this really cuts out a lot of things that makes the series great. Only just to focus on a couple of characters. So it doesn't set a really good expectation going into the Gundam franchise going forward. Other than that, as an overall though, Age's Memory of Eden compilation movies are a welcoming and pleasant surprise for compilation movies in the entire Gundam franchise. It sets a brand new expectation and standard how a compilation movie should be. In fact, or in this case, a retelling in a sense. The first movie, again, is literally a retelling with an 80% new footage, 20% footage from the entire series, where they retool a lot of scenes, a lot of dialogue, to really become a huge focus on our primary characters of Asimu, Z-Heart, and then support character of Romery. I really do wish a lot of compilation movies, or in certain cases with retellings, to be just like this. This is almost, I want to say, a first in the entire Gundam franchise. However, unfortunately, with the first movie, the second movie doesn't follow the same footsteps. The second movie follows more closely to a lot of compilation movies we've seen in the Gundam franchise, and does closely with the 80% stock or footage from the series, 20% newer footage. But at least with the second movie, it does a lot of justice to characters such as Z-Heart and Fram, and giving them, especially with Z-Heart, more explanation about why he's doing things that his character shouldn't be doing, rather than just saying whatever and doing it like he does in the series. So the movies give a lot more explanation and a lot more dive into these characters, and really forges the friendship between Asimu and Z-Heart. While I can't out-recommend these two movies unless you have watched Age, I do have to say they are an absolute fantastic companion pieces to Age, and if you do watch Age, definitely you want to watch these two movies. They are something I would recommend and definitely not to miss. That said, Mobile Suit Gundam Age, Memory of Eden gets a 4 out of 5. I do have to say Memory Eden is a absolute delight of a compilation movie. like I said, I really wish more compilation movies in the Gundam franchise are exactly like Memory of Eden. I would almost say I wish a lot of them were like the first movie, because I would love to see a retelling, retooling, and fixing things up. I could totally see that with the original Gundam, making it more of a heavier focus on Amuro, or the rivalry between Amuro and Char and stuff like that. Or maybe like Zeta Gundam, make it more of a better focus on Camille, or a better understanding of what's going on in the world in Zeta Gundam. Fortunately, we don't really get a whole lot of that in like a lot of compilation movies, but I think Memory of Eden sets a really good example and precedents that should be followed going forward. But that's all I had to say about Gundam Age and Memory of Eden overall. If you haven't already, if you're watching this on Twitch, make sure to follow me on my Twitch account here. If you are watching this on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment down below. I want to hear from you guys. Did you like my opinions about Age? Did you not like my opinions? Did you watch Age? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you think it's absolute garbage and you still think it's like ZZ Gundam? Or what about Memory of Eden? Have you seen it before, and do you agree with what I have to say about that? I want to hear from you guys. Leave a comment down below. Aside from all of that, I do want to thank you guys for sticking around and watching this review. And until the next nerdy reviews, I'll see you next time. Take care.